Watching a video over Napoleon's invasion of Russia. Please fill out the handout as you watch the video. These will also help you answer the questions from the Ed Puzzle and will also help you answer the discussion questions at the end of the lecture. When you're done with the lecture and the discussion questions, you have a timeline activity, and all these things will prepare you for a drama that you will perform with your classmates at the end of the lesson. All right, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoy the lecture, and I will talk to you soon. Bye. Welcome. Today we're going to learn about Napoleon's invasion of Russia. At the end of the lesson, you should be able to discuss the Berlin Decree and the Continental System, and how the Berlin Decree and the Continental System helped spark Napoleon's invasion of Russia. Describe Napoleon's invasion of Russia, including the causes, major events, problems for France, and outcome of the war. And explain how the invasion of Russia helped bring about a return to a monarchy in France and the abdication of Napoleon Bonaparte temporarily. Students, you will be able to demonstrate that you have met these learning goals by completing an Ed Puzzle about Napoleon's invasion of Russia, which you're working on right now, as well as other activities. Preparing for and performing a drama about Napoleon's invasion of Russia with your classmates. This starts with the Berlin Decree. Napoleon was Emperor of France, who took over most of Europe during Napoleonic Wars, defeating a series of European coalitions who attempted to stop him, and coalitions are alliances. By 1806, Napoleon had somehow gained control of most of Europe. And although he had somehow gained control of most of Europe, he could not control Britain, and Britain was an island country with a strong navy. So instead, in November of 1806, Napoleon issued the Berlin Decree forbidding countries in continental Europe from trading with Britain. This was an embargo against Britain, and it becomes known as the Continental System, and an embargo is a ban on trade with another country. Napoleon hoped to starve out Britain and have them seek peace and hope that they would join the Continental System as well. However, the Continental System had a negative impact on most of Europe. While Britain continued to thrive, prices rose throughout most of Europe, and supplies became scarce. Many countries became resentful of France, and several members of the Continental System began to rebel against Napoleon, especially Spain and Russia. By 1811, Russia started trading with Britain again, and this went against the Continental System, and this angered Napoleon. Napoleon also had rumors about Russia wanting to take over Poland, which was controlled by France at the time. So Napoleon decided to become the aggressor, and he invaded Russia in April of 1812 with about 450,000 soldiers, the largest army ever assembled. And he started in April because he knew Russia had harsh winters, and he wanted to get into Russia before the winter had an impact on his soldiers. Here is a famous infographic that shows Napoleon's route and the amount of soldiers he had during the invasion. So the width of this line shows how many soldiers he had. So he started off with 450,000 soldiers about. You can see this gets narrower and narrower and narrower as he gets closer and closer to Russia. And when he reached Moscow, he's down to about 130,000 soldiers. He's going to leave Moscow with about 100,000 soldiers, and that number is going to continue to dwindle until he has a very small army return to France. Put this in perspective, Napoleon invaded with 450,000 soldiers into Russia. Around the same time, George Washington's army for the American Revolution was between about 10,000 and 15,000 soldiers. As France invaded Russia, the Russian army largely retreated eastward, farther into Russia, avoiding battle. This was called scorched earth policy, and scorched earth means Russia destroyed buildings and farms as they retreated to prevent the enemy from using these resources. In September of 1812, France caught up with the Russian army about 70 miles west of Moscow, and this started the Battle of Borodino. And despite Napoleon's army only having 1/3 of its original strength, so they're around 130,000 at this point, France won and quickly advanced towards Moscow, which is the capital of Russia. You can see the fires in the background here. So now we start off with 450,000 and it dwindles. You have the Battle of Borodino here, and then when he reaches Moscow, you're down to about 130,000. As Napoleon approached Moscow, winter was approaching, and food and supplies were running low due to the scorched earth that the Russians did. Meanwhile, Napoleon spent much of his time in a carriage, staying warm and eating several meals a day, not realizing what his soldiers were going through. Napoleon assumed that food, being harvest season, and shelter would be available for his army once they reached Moscow, and therefore Russia would seek peace. So 1 week after the Battle of Borodino, Napoleon and his army arrived in Moscow, the capital of Russia. Surprisingly, the city was abandoned and there was no food available for Napoleon's army. So this hope for food and shelter when they reach Moscow and his hope that Russia would surrender is lost. Shortly after France's army arrived in Moscow, the city was set on fire, and we're not sure exactly who set the city on fire, but it was most likely Russian arsonists. And during the Moscow Fire of 1812, most of Moscow was destroyed by fire. Now Napoleon is in a bad situation. They have no food, their shelter is burning, and their supply lines are very long, and his soldiers are starting to dwindle. So in October, about a month later, Napoleon decides to leave Moscow and return westward towards France, largely because they have no food and shelter, and you have a cold winter approaching, and Napoleon's army was down to 100,000 soldiers when they started to head back to France, so they'd already lost tens of thousands of soldiers while in Moscow. And here you see the return to Moscow is going to be very harsh with the cold winter, and Napoleon's army retreats were slowed by attacks from Russian army as well as peasants in Russia. So this means he's going to experience more winter and colder winter. He continues to lose men while retreating. The worst of these came while crossing the Berezina River. You have cold temperatures as low as 37 degrees below zero. By November, it's going to continue that way through December. You have soldiers dying from cold temperatures and exposure. You have people losing limbs and fingers and toes due to the cold conditions. You also have people starving because they don't have any food or supplies during this time. And now you can see this infographic once again with 400,000 soldiers or 450,000 soldiers to start. The number dwindles down here to about 100,000 by the time he reaches Moscow. And when he leaves Moscow, he has 100,000, continues for a while. Then you see a little cut here, another drop here. And here you see the Berezina River, where it gets cut even more. And by the time he arrives back, he's going to have a very, very small force. In fact, only 10,000 soldiers make it back to France. So Napoleon's invasion was one of the biggest military disasters in history. Only about 10,000 soldiers of the original 450,000 from Napoleon's army returned safely from Russia. Many of these people died not from the war itself, but from cold or starvation. And here you see the numbers dwindling, and at the bottom here you see 10,000 people. Also on the bottom of this infographic, you see the temperatures, and the temperatures are dropping all the way down to 37 below zero. The invasion of Russia severely weakened Napoleon's army. Napoleon, who was very feared throughout Europe before the invasion of Russia, now becomes susceptible to an attack himself. So European countries joined together again, forming another coalition to defeat Napoleon. Once again, coalitions are alliances. This is called the Sixth Coalition. The Sixth Coalition defeated Napoleon's army and drove Napoleon to exile. So after finally all these coalitions, they are going to be successful and drive Napoleon out of power. After being defeated by the Sixth Coalition, Napoleon is forced to abdicate or give up power. Before he does so, he tries to commit suicide by drinking poison. His body rejects it and he survives. He's going to be forced into exile to the island of Elba, which is not far from Corsica, where he grew up. It's right off the coast of Italy. France is going to return to a monarchy during this time, and Louis XVIII is going to become king. He is the brother of Louis XVI, who we learned about in the French Revolution was a poor leader, unliked, and was eventually executed using the guillotine. Louis XVIII was in exile during the French Revolution, and he is going to return to France to rule. However, his rule is going to be temporary because Napoleon is going to later return to power. However, Napoleon's return to power is also going to be temporary, as Louis XVIII will return. So those are some things we're going to talk about up ahead when we talk about Napoleon's escape from Elba and return to power, and then his second exile after the Battle of Waterloo. In your handout that you're filling out, you have some discussion questions to read through. You can fill out the sheet if you want to, or discuss with a neighbor. You have 10 questions there. You also have a handout of a timeline activity where you are going to put these events in chronological order. You will put a 1 next to the event that's first, a 2 next to the event that's second, 3 next to the event that's third, based on chronological order, which one's first, all the way to 5th, which is the last event from these 5. Then you're going to draw these pictures in the box, a non-linguistic representation of these events. Make sure you show action and detail, no stick figures. You want to make sure you have at least 2 or 3 specific details from the event that would make it obvious you understand what you're talking about. And then after you're done with the pictures, you're going to take these same events and plot them on the timeline that you see down below. They are already plotted on there. All you have to do is identify which event goes with which line. And you can see that most of these events spanned over the period of several months, or in the case of the first event, spanned over several years. Once you have those things done, you have a major activity. And in this activity, you are going to perform a drama. And this is the checklist of things you will need to do. So here's your directions for the drama. You're going to work in groups of 3 to 4 students, and you're going to perform a drama about Napoleon's invasion of Russia. Your drama must include at least 5 scenes, and these are going to be your 5 scenes from the timeline, with each scene lasting between 20 and 40 seconds. Each scene should be performed in chronological order, so you're going to start with the first event, and you're going to end with the last event that started. Include a virtual background, and we're going to learn more about that in the actual prompt, and at least 2 props. So these are going to be props that you will create that are about Napoleon's invasion of Russia. Since you will not be allowed to talk during a performance, this is going to be a silent or near silent drama. You will need to portray these events without dialogue. However, you may use sound effects in your drama if that makes it more exciting for you or helps you portray your events better. You may either record this and edit the drama to be shown to your classmates, or you can just prepare and perform the drama live in class. Once you are done with this video and the discussion questions and the timeline, you will have a prompt that you will work on, and you will consult the prompt and then the checklist, which will be used to determine how well you did. If you have any questions, please talk to me or email me if you have anything else that you're unsure about. 2 more references that you can refer to, and where I got a lot of my information, is an article from History, and this is entitled "Why Napoleon's Invasion of Russia Was the Beginning of the End." And then you also have another video. This one is from the Khan Academy, talking about the French invasion of Russia. Thanks for listening. If you have any questions, please email me or talk to me in class, and I will talk to you later. Bye. And lastly, here are my image citations for the PowerPoint.